if you understand how to work with the bees, you're going to be way so farther ahead than anybody else. The pests are something that, as far as the inspector, I get reports from the state all the time, so I know where there's hot spots and what's going on. As far as the diseases, the only disease we have in Defiance County right now is up near Nay. We had American foul brood from a commercial beekeeper last year. It has some hives, and instead of reporting it or saying anything about it, my state boss and I went up, found it. He had taken his hive, broke everything apart, and left them open to get robbed out from everybody else, which is the last thing you want. So what happened is now I have to maintain and corral up about 20 beekeepers up there in about a 25-mile area zone to lock down that I have to inspect right off the bat because it's American foul brood.
Jamie,
American foul brood. Go
ahead.
Can I
ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Just about the enforcement of that. And I don't mean to be punitive. I'm just curious. When that happens as a bee inspector and as a state, couldn't y'all like pull his whatever the register the apiary
apiary?
Yeah, the apiary registration? Or no?
There's a lot of legal stuff with this. I'm not, there's some things that I can detect. Okay. It smells like a chicken coop. The cappings, instead of being convex, like towered over, they're right. Convex or concave. That means they're dipped down. They have pinholes. The brood's all snotty. There's things I can check. I'm not ever going to come to somebody's house. And there's a law in Ohio because of two competing beekeepers. One was an inspector, one was not. They were both competing for the same area as far as forage. The bee inspector at that time had made claim that the other guy had all American foul brood, went on his property and burnt all thousands of his hives to the ground, saying that he had American foul brood. And it started this thing. That's how non-consent, that's how a lot of these laws came into effect after that. So what happens now is if I suspect American foul brood, I take a black tip felt marker and I write my initials on every part of the box, on all sides of the box, every one of the frames, every bee box in the area. I write my name on everything. It takes hours and hours. And then what I do is I call the beekeeper and quarantine that area. I cannot tell you, let's just say you live within 5 miles of Nay. I cannot say, Jamie Walters has American foul brood down the road from here, because there's a privacy law and and a lot of other things get involved in that. But what I can say is you have American foul brood in your area, and please maintain your hives or inspect your hives a little bit more often, say every 4 to 5 days, and just inspect and see if you have anything that other than looks than what we're going to go through here is nice, white, creamy brood. If you start seeing yellow brood, twisted brood, guaranteed off the bat, it's American or European. So there's all kinds of things to look for. What I do is if I suspect that you have American foul brood, I'll actually take a knife and cut out a chunk of that comb. I'll take a Q-tip and run it down into the cells and look for snotty brood. Right. And then what I do is put everything in signed or little sealed containers. You'll put your initials. I'll put mine. We send them off to the state. If it comes back, then there's other precautions that we take. But there's a whole chain of events that have to happen. And in the end of it, those things get burnt. Then we dig a ditch or dig a trough, burn it, put it down inside, cover it back up. Because if you put it, there was recommendations a few years back that put it in a burn barrel and burn it. The problem is honey doesn't burn. And a lot of the comb doesn't burn. It just drips out. So what happens after the fire cools down? Now you have more bees robbing, and they're to run and taking. Honeybees love to work, hands down, but they're also opportunists.
Sure.
And they'll rob from one colony to the other. So if they do, and that drips out, next thing you know, when a spore of American foul brood blossoms, there's billions with a B, billions of spores that come out. It only takes a honeybee 2 to 3 spores to pick up on their body, which is negatively charged. It's how pollen sticks to it, to take it back to the colony and start that whole cycle over again. So that's when they say there's pockets of American foul brood, Columbus, Toledo, Cincinnati, where the big commercial guys are at. and you have these pockets, and it's for the inspectors to stay on top of this and do their absolute due diligence about this. And that's when I started getting into this. I made the map up, so I know I can call 10 beekeepers within 5 minutes and say, hey, if you see anything else, then I know which way it's going, or where things are being spread out. If he does not do his best management practices as far as the beekeeper who would have the disease, then there's legal things that we can get the sheriff's office involved, confiscate gear and do. I mean, but that, I've never been to that side of it, but I have heard some horror stories that some beekeepers, I just want bees to be bees. And that might have been fine in the 60s and 70s, but now we have, just like we have this disease now, we had Varroa come over, we've had hive beetle come over, we've had European foul brood come over. We have all these tests because we internationally ship, internationally change things around. Now we have all these new laws in effect to protect beekeepers from somebody who just wants to go, and you know what, I'm not going to do anything about it. So just like I said, when you try and put cattle or dogs or anything in a fenced in area, they're just going to die in that area. They're not affecting anybody else. But our bees are traversing 5 miles in every direction. So if I'm a good beekeeper, you have a better chance of being a good beekeeper. Mm-hmm. If you know somebody who's going to get into bees and say, Joe Schmo down the road is going to get into bees, but he doesn't want to get educated. He doesn't want to go to classes. He just wants to keep bees. You as a beekeeper, if you know he's in your area, reach out that friendly limb and say, hey, do you know about Varroa? Do you know about this? We have a club meeting. You want to come to the club meeting with us and educate people who want to get into this hobby, because they're affecting everybody else. And it only takes one person to be that one person that gets into it and goes, well, it's not for me, but I'll just let the bees be bees in the woods and I'll just let them go. So it's everybody's best interest to go out and talk. Even if you don't know it all, say, hey, we have a club in the area. We have Maumee Valley up in Swanton. We have Black Swamp Beekeepers. We have Northwest Ohio Beekeepers. We have a state organization, and introduce and give everybody as much chance to try to be a good beekeeper as they can be.
Thanks.
Not a problem. Any other questions real quick? All right. I'm going to go ahead and put everybody on mute real quick, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. The honeybee biology, and we'll go ahead and get started since I'm not going to go through this again. Apis melliferae is the family or genus. And then after that, there's the prefix on the rear end. So I say Apis melliferae carnica is the carnolian bee, which is right over here off to the left. Linguistica is your Italian bees. Those are the blonde bees. This is the color of the queen. We'll talk about the workers after that. Then you have Apis melliferae was the German black bees that came over. Sculiente is the African bee, subspecies of the western bee. And then you have others, buckfast, carnations, Cordovans, Russians, and then it goes on and after that. If you see the coloring of the queen, that only gives you about 30% of what that queen might be. I could have tons and tons of blonde bees and keep breeding from that same queen, and all of a sudden one daughter will be dark chocolate or be black. It's just because of her father or her stepfathers, because when a female goes out to mate, she mates 15, 20, 30 times. So it all depends on the breed or what's going on. But what you're dealing with when you're talking breeds, everybody is trying to breed for different things, for honey production, for calmness, for gentleness, for disease resistance. When people say they have a straight strain, the only one that I know of that is absolute 100% is Sue Colby. Sue Colby's queens go for $800 plus, but she's on an island with no other bees. I don't think there's anything else around. And she's got buckfast bees, and she's got all kinds of scientifically made bees with artificial insemination. Those are the only people. So anything else you see in the catalogs that say if even if I made a claim, I have Italian bees. And if you came out with me and looked at all my hives, I'll have some Italians that look like Italians. I'll have some that look like buckbass. I'll have some that look like Cardovans or Cornolians. It's a mutt, and it just depends. It's like mixing two different dogs, a poodle and a terrier. You know, what are you going to come out? Some of them will look like one, some of them will look like the other. But those are the main species that we're talking about. Different breeds of bees have different traits. And this is just a chart that you'll see around. It goes around Facebook quite a bit during the bee season. And different ones have different things because they, like the African, are they calm on the calm on the comb? One, absolutely not. Those are the bees that are going to come after you. Those are the bees that are going to light you up from head to toe. But the defensive behaviors, 10. Early buildup. That means they build up so fast. Honey collection, a 10. That's why when they took the Africanized bee in Mexico and they mixed it with the Italian bee here, they thought they would get a superior race that would pull in tons and tons of honey. What they made was a bee that kills things. So we go to Buckfast, has all kinds of different traits: Carnolians, Caucasian, Cardovans, Italian, Russians, and there's 15 different breeds. So it depends what you want. And I won't go into much more of that. So for the anatomy of the bees, if you understand this, you'll understand a little bit more. We won't go into the whole thing on this, but there's actually encyclopedia books, 800-page plus books. I mean, you can get them at the conferences and everything else about every muscle, every exoskeletal part on this bee. We're just going to go through some of the highlights. The ocellus is the simple eyes. They focus but do not provide light. So there's 3 dots on the top of every type of honeybee. And it's better than any GPS because when they leave the front entrance of that hive and they go out and forage, they have to come back every 25 to 30 minutes. If I take that hive and I move it over 1 foot to the left or right, the bee is going to come back and hit the original spot where that hive was at. That's how good their GPS is. It's not going to say renavigating or turn around, make a U-turn or anything else. They know exactly, they calculate the sun's rays and the ultraviolet. They know exactly where it was. It will take them up to an hour to find where that hive has moved to, even if you move it a foot or a foot and a half over. So the bees are going to come back to that spot every time. So when we move bees, we move them in the middle of the night. They have compound eyes. The average worker has 4,000 to 6,000. The drones have 7,000 to 8,000. You'll see why with the drones. They have a much larger eye for mating. But all they do, so imagine walking into Best Buy and seeing 6,000 televisions on at the same time in one camera. As you make movement, that movement through that entire series of one eye of 6,000 cells on there is moving back and forth. So when we say we're talking about moving slow, the slower you move, the less they can pick up on you and the more docile they are. If I'm swatting and I'm swipping, I mean, everybody, you've seen a bee fly into a picnic or something, what's everybody doing? Swatting their hands up and down. That movement compounded over by 12,000 for 6,000 on each eye, that's how the bees zero in on you. Honeybees, they're not the yellow jackets and things that when you go to a picnic that are in the trash cans at the football games, they're interrupting things. Those are the meat eaters. Those are the ones that are aggressive, that'll come out: ground hornets, black-faced hornets, bald-faced hornets, mud daubers and things like that. Those are the meat eaters. Those are the ones out picking out, eating, getting into our hives, picking out brood, spiders, aphids, things like that. Honeybees, pollinators, solitary bees, mason bees, leafcutter bees, those are all the ones doing the pollinating. I could take my hand and grab every one of them as long as I wasn't squeezing them, put them in my hand, and they're fine. When you go to squeeze them, that's that defensiveness to try to come out and sting. The antennae. This is everything. Imagine the first 4 to 6 weeks of your life, a worker only lives 4 to 6 weeks. So imagine that every week of that, prior to that last week, you're doing by the sense of sound, smell, and touch. And that's what they're doing with their antennae. They buzz around. They've been doing it for millions of years. They hear everything. They can sense you long before you've gotten to the hive. The labium is the tongue. The tongue can fold out, and that's about 3/16 of an inch, or excuse me, inch. When you turn around and take to a bee, different breeds of bees have different lengths of tongues. So the labium is up at the top, then it forks out, and when they actually drink, there's hairs that are pointed upwards, and that little nectar is just that little BB is going to roll right back up inside. She's going to take it and put it in her honey crop. The mandibles are the teeth. Here on the outside, you'll see on the set on the outside of it, that's what they use to mandibilize, or they turn around and manipulate wax. They turn around and move around nectar, or excuse me, move around pollen and things like that. And the proboscis is the tongue. That's the one it reaches out. So imagine this entire tongue, kind of like alien. It completely goes out as this folds up, these fold together, that folds up, and it all tucks up inside her head all the way up to the top. So she can completely close that back up, fly as she hits a flower. If she needs to pull it open or spread it out, she can open up her mouth part, spread that open, and put her mouth down inside the nectar. The glossia is the insect's tongue down through the center. And the maximilia is the whole entire part. So if you like a microscope and you want to take a honeybee, put her underneath the microscope, get some nice little set of tweezers and pull her apart. I like to do it every once in a while, just to turn on and go through my parts of what my bees are. And you can actually pull this apart and extend it. And that's a picture underneath my microscope. Like I said, we won't go through all of it, but this is what you're going to go through. The salivary gland, the wax glands up underneath, the stinger in the rectum and the venom sac, the Nasonoff gland, the come hither smell. That's when they turn around, and if they're out in a swarm, you'll see bees with their heads down, their butts up. The seventh targa starts to bend out, and it gives off a Nasonoff gland. For us, what we smell is lemongrass. And they'll turn around and they'll come right to where those workers are fanning. They have two sets of wings. They actually have Velcro in between that they can lock them together and make one wing. So if they turn around, need to fly. Honey. When bees process honey, they take it in through the tongue, run it back, and it comes into their honey crop. That is not their stomach. There's a sphinx in between that locks it off between that and the midgut and the stomach. This can go up to 2/3 her body weight that she can turn around, pull the nectar in, and then when she goes back and feeds it to the colony or feeds it to a daughter or sister, and she turns around, puts it, she squeezes this muscle and she'll regurgitate that nectar back inside. The active ingredient that turns nectar into honey is called invertus. So it's kind of like stomach acid for us. So think of taking a saltine cracker, putting it into your mouth. Don't touch your mouth, but just as you go to do it, what's your mouth going to do? Salivate. It's the same kind of thing. So the invertus in this, she'll turn around and give this to another sister. So they'll go tongue to tongue trophallaxis. A field bee will give this to her sister. She'll mix this with more invertus. And the invertus actually takes the glucose and breaks it down into fructose and sucrose and glucose. Here's a few of the anatomy underneath the microscope. Her pollen baskets, her antennae with the claws, her antennae cleaner on her front legs. If she wants to clean her antennae, she can take her antennae, drop them down, and here's a cleaner. So imagine a squeegee built right into your armpit that you can turn around and take and clean your antennae off. Here's the forewing on the leading edge of this is Velcro. So they can actually dip the forewing into the aft wing and lock it together and actually make it. So here's the little platelets of wax. You'll see when I talked about a number 2 or a felt tip, fine tip felt marker, excuse me. That's that little platelet of wax that you see. And that nurse bee has to have nectar, pollen, water, and a mix of bee bread to secrete. And she only can secrete wax for up to about a week and a half that she can secrete this wax. So imagine all these little tiny platelets. If you put it on a tip of a mat or a tip of a pin, like a bobby pin, that little piece of wax is just so delicate, and it looks like a little tiny dot underneath a microscope. This is kind of magnified, but that's all that wax that they produce. Then another sister will come over, take that piece of wax, put it together, and then make out drawn comb. This is the tip of a needle, and that's the barb of the stinger itself. It's actually jagged, and there's 3 parts to it. So when they sting you, it's just not an injection. The 3 parts, there's 2 parts of muscle. And what they'll do when she pulls out, if you'll look down here at the venom sac on the bottom picture, on the middle picture, that venom sac, when she tears out, when she stings you, that barb will go inside, injecting down into your skin and lock in. This muscle, there's a left and right chamber with the venom sac. Each chamber will beat independently. So it'll go left, right, left, right, left, right. And at that time, this thing's acting like a sewing machine and zigging back and forth, working its way down into your skin and embedding all the way up to the bottom here where it gets thicker. And then it'll sit for about 15 minutes and keep doing like a heartbeat and injecting that poison inside your body. So when you get stung, the best thing you do is take a credit card, something sharp, your hive tool, and scrape across the area. Do not ever take your fingers and squeeze it, because when you squeeze it, now you've just taken that into like a hypodermic needle and squeezed all that venom into your skin, especially if it's around your face. As soon as you get stung, and every beekeeper, you guys will make the same mistake that we all have. When you zip together your suit, I always say the ABCs. You start from the left and zip that one. You call that A. You turn around, pull the other one over B. You pull the one for the center chest up. You flip the flap down, which is D, and hit yourself in the chest a little bit, tapping that shut. You're going to get into a habit, and then you're going to go, oh, I forgot about it. The first time that you get into the bee yard and she's crawling on the veil in front of your eyes and you're trying to focus about, is she on the inside or outside? Do not take and go and blow on her, because she'll come up and hit you in the lip. She'll hit you around the eye. And the next thing you know, you're going to look like the pictures or previous pictures of the other guys. But if you get stung, take your fingernail, just scrape it and scrape it out. Don't squeeze that sac and then squirt all that into your arm or face or anything else. And what I was talking about, the bee sting in the ultraviolet, when we see yellow flowers in the ultraviolet range, the flowers are actually giving the bees a target and telling them, this is where the sweet spot's at. Here's where the pollen's at. Here's where the nectar's at. And that's what the bees see. If you turn around and type in honeybee ultraviolet, there's tons and tons of websites that have beautiful, beautiful flowers that we see even look more extravagant when you see them in the ultraviolet. But the flowers, and the flowers are having, quote, flower sex, because that's what gives us our seeds. That's what gives us our flowers. That's what gives us our watermelons and fruits and vegetables and apples and pears and oranges and things. So since the flowers are actually tricking the bees into spreading their pollen to each other, the male on the stamen part of the flower, picking that pollen up and either cross-contaminating or cross-pollinating or pollinating their own flowers. Like an apple tree. An apple tree cannot take its own pollen and pollinate itself. It needs a crossbreed of a different apple. Some cherry trees can turn around and pollinate themselves by the wind, others can't. And they need these pollinators, just not our honeybees, but the butterflies, the monarchs, the mason bees, leafcutter bees, and things to pollinate. When you have those flowers out, that's what you're getting your fruits and vegetables from. So 74% of what you eat every day is a pollinator at work. A little bit more about the anatomy. You'll see the pollen baskets. She can grow that up to about twice her body weight. The bees on a honeybee, it's called branched hairs. Each hair it comes up, it branches out, and it makes a negative charge. So as she's beating her wings, she's making a static charge that the pollen just jumps off the flower and onto her. Here's a little bit more of it, and you'll see different color pollen. Right now, a red pollen's coming in, and it's from dead nettle flowers. The same way here with these the little wax pieces, and then her tongue, she's actually drinking with her trophallaxis and drinking inside. The colony. And there's 2 things when we talk about colony and the hive. The colony is the collective unit of all the individual parts. Tom Seeley again, bee democracy. But it's all the bees together that are making a decision of how things need to work. When we talk about the hive, beekeepers are talking about the hive itself. That means the woodware, the medium frames, deep frames, excluder, front entrance. When we're talking the colony, we're talking the bees. So if you take an individual bee and she gets inside your car, puts a little bit of dot of honey up on your dashboard, she'll sit there and she'll be real nice. When they're collective, that's when they're making decisions. There's decisions of house bees, nurse bees, forager bees, caretaker bees. There's super sisters that make individual choices of if there's too much pollen, if there's too much brood, if there's this or that. And they're making them decisions. They all give off pheromones, and that's how that decision gets made to do different things. The different things they do at temperatures is they're taking cleansing flights. So right now, if you have a brand new suit, you want to go out and get it nice and dirty, stand in front of a hive. When they go out and take a cleansing flight, they'll go out, they'll defecate, and they'll go right back inside. A bee can actually freeze. It's not they get froze, but it's like arthritis. They'll just slow down and they'll just pause, they'll freeze, and they'll just stay that way. They cluster between 40 to 47 degrees. They start to get paralysis or or they move a little bit slower at 50. The queen and the bee, the brood and the queen stays at 95. And also at the other end of this, if it's 110 degrees with a heat index, it's so sweltering hot outside, do not inspect your bees on the other end of this spectrum, because the bees are tankering in water, and when they're bringing in that water, they're actually making a swamp cooler, and the bees are bearding out the front. They're trying to spit in water. They're trying to cool this down so it doesn't get overly hot. If you go inspecting and opening up this hive at 100 plus degrees, you're running, you'll kill that hive within hours, especially if it's at night. If you want to move that colony, if it's an extreme night like that, it's say August, and you want to move that colony, or you find a split and you tape it shut, you have within easily an hour that you're going to everything's going to defecate and make a mess. So in the colony, we have three prodigies. We have our worker, our queen, and our drones. As you'll see, the workers have little tiny eyes, a thicker thorax, a longer abdomen. The queen, much larger eyes, large thorax, because we can actually mark this. The color this year is green for the queen, so we can actually take a felt tip marker. I have little tiny numbers with type bond 2 that I put on so I can number her. And there's her abdomen. She's got 125 fallopian tubes on each side. And then the drones. If you'll notice, the drone's eyes meet in the middle. His ocelli are so far back, huge, gigantic thorax, big, gigantic abdomen. These will actually sound like a flying jet if they're near your ears. They have a loud hum. So, taking that away, here's what they look like in real life. Large abdomen, larger thorax, little eyes, and the guess, a queen. Here's 90% of the workforce, smaller, and the striping in the back is inherent of the 15 to 20 other drones that this queen mated with. So you'll see different striping, and if you see a colony with tons of different colors of all the different workers, that means that queen went out and mated well. If all the workers look just like their mother, that means she didn't get out and make a good mating flight, or maybe there's a problem with the queen. So we have our workers. And then again, if you look at the drones, their entire front head. So imagine the boys, they go out to a DCA, they need the eyesight because they can't see that far. They have twice as many lenses. They need to be able to see the queens. So you have a drone. So drones, we'll start out with the laziest guys. 24 days to emerge, 12 additional days to sexually mature, and they're always about 10% of the colony. So they turn on, and the bees will turn on, and absolutely every time you see the colony, the boys are about 10%. They mate with queens in a drone congregation area. So think of the boys hanging out at a DCA, drone congregation area, 80 to 150 feet in the air along the side of a woods, a building, depression in the earth, maybe along anything like that. And they hang out. They'll fly out, and they can hang out for 25 minutes, and then they have to come back and be fed. They can come back to any hive they want. They can come back to hive A, B, C, one in a tree, one in a car, anywhere else. And the workers inside the colony will feed the drones. He does not have the mouth parts or the anatomy to run and eat. He needs to be fed. Along that, here's where the drones will carry in the varroa. So if he goes out to hive A, And hive A is me, a good beekeeper, and that drone also goes out in a mile or 4 mile area, and he mates and he gets into another colony that has varroa or disease. Guess what he picks up? And then what does he come back to? He comes back to my hive the next day, because they always, by the end of the day, he'll come back to the main hive. Now he's just brought back varroa, European foul brood, sac brood, and any other caveat of any other disease. The thing with the boys, about the time you see the dandelions bloom, which almost Roger, myself, Dwight Wilson, Anthony, a bunch of them, we've all seen the dandelions coming out. That's when the queen starts to lay the drones. What happens? He gets to live all summer long. Great life. When we get that first heavy frost, that's when the girls all condense together. They take all the boys, shove them out to the front entrance, and the boys freeze and die and starve out. There's no boys. So about the time when we start getting our first heavy frost, when you walk outside and it looks like Christmas time, I'll start getting phone calls of, Jamie, there's thousands of bees in front of my colony, and the bees are dying. What do? I tell everybody, take a handful of bees and look and see what they are. Then I'll usually start getting phone calls. Oh, they're all drones. This is the end of season. Over the wintertime, no boys in the colonies. When they go out and take them, if there's a virgin queen that goes out and flies out, what happens is the males copulate with the queen. His phallus will go up inside. His endophallus will go up inside, transfer the sperm. It snaps off. He falls to his death and dies in the matter of like 0.3 of a second. Then the queen will turn on and go around as she flies. The end of his endophallus is inside. The next drone will come up, pull that out, and he'll mate over and over. So when she comes out, she'll come out, fly through that crowd or that cloud of bees and the DCAs, and each drone will turn on. And the best drones to keep up with her, because she flies faster than the drones, the best one. So she's getting the best of the best. To keep this PG, if you think if she's going to go out and only mate once, is he a dud or a stud? So what they're doing, if you know your mean, median, and mode, your mean is your smallest number, or 0. Your mean, median, mode is the top, so that's the max, and they usually never get to that number. So she's looking for the median. She's looking for the best survivability, best traits, best stamina, and everything else. So she's looking to collect at least 8 milliliters of sperm, which will last her 1 to 3 years of laying 1,500 to 2,000 eggs per day. Workers, from the time from an egg to emerging is 21 days. In an average colony, we're talking 2 deeps in a super, there's 40 to 80,000 bees in that colony. So as that colony grows, everybody, we always play with this number. We always say this number. Randy Oliver is a very, very highly, if you hear Randy Oliver, he's one of the biggest beekeepers around. He's out in Washington State, runs about 8,000 hives. Scientific guy. He says that some colonies, if it's a young virgin queen that just got mated, she's laying well, the colony can get to 100,000 plus. The workers are infertile and cannot lay eggs. They have the same parts in the rear, in the back end, but the workers will never go out and do a mating flight. If the old queen dies and you do not inspect your hives, she will lay infertile eggs on top of pollen. She'll lay 5 and 6 eggs per cell. She just makes it a mess. And she can become fertile if there's no queen in there. The QMP of the queen actually suppresses the sexuality of all the workers, and they cannot lay eggs. But if something happens to your queen, you pull up a frame in the middle, you kill your queen off by accident, or Mother Nature takes its course, or something happens, then the workers can lay. And when you have a laying worker, there's a whole mess and things that you have to do on top of that. But I won't go through all of it, but they are the workforce. They're the ones doing all the work. Their maximum life is 4 to 6 weeks from the time they emerge to the time that at the end of their life, the last week of their life, they're the foragers that are going out and collecting all the nectar, the water, the pollen. As their wings start to deteriorate, if they come back and they're wore out, they just have nothing left in them, they don't smell right. When they come into land to go inside the colony, they're going to do a head bump with the guard bees that are protecting the front. If she doesn't smell right or something's wrong, that worker will ball her. she'll turn around and bite her wings off, cripple her, and then a guard bee or a caretaker bee will actually pick her up, fly her out, drop her off somewhere, and come back. So they keep the colony clean no matter what. So we've all heard busy as a bee. That's exactly where the phrase come from. From the time they're born to the time they die, 4 to 6 weeks, they do not rest. They do not take naps. This colony's busy 24 hours a day. So you'll see bees in nature. It's called festooning. They're actually measuring out how much comb that they need to measure out. This is in a tree. This is a picture from in Florida where they actually have open hives they're on branches. You won't see too many open hives this area unless it's late in the season and the bees just have nowhere to go. And then you see trophallaxis through the tongue. They're transferring food, nectar, or bee bread to each other back and forth. So the workers, from the first week of their life, they clean the cells, they cap cells, they tend to the brood. So think of babysitters. That 4th week, they're building comb. They're grooming each other, and they're turning with the queen. They handle food. They're doing ventilation where they just sit around and beat their wings. So as you see this prodigy of life from the youngest to the oldest, they're guard bees, and after that, foraging. So here's the nurse bees actually feeding a larvae. She's probably feeding, at that point, the old larvae. She's probably feeding bee bread and a mixture of that and royal jelly. They're going out foraging, so you know that's the foragers, the last week of her life. And through trophallaxis, this could be a house bee or food handling bee on the inside. If it's a very newborn bee, so brand new, you will not see this coloring. You'll see all blonde hairs. So when she's born, she does not have the coloring yet, but she'll be completely blonde. So when you turn around, open up your colony, and you see cap brood and you see these little blonde bees walking around, no, it's not another type of bee. It's a brand new baby bee. And I have a question. Do you know when Mandy will be getting? Oh, okay. All right. I'll answer that here at the break. I'm sorry. The queen, 16 days to emerge, 7 to 10 days to make her mating flight. And then she makes multiple flights that we talked about for breeding. She can lay fertile and non-fertile eggs. And what happens is the fallopian tubes on both sides, she has a spermatheca. The spermatheca will hold 8 milliliters of sperm. When she lays an egg, it's kind of like a chicken. So imagine these little tiny cells all the way up to the smallest. If you take a number 2 pencil, break the fine tip off, and put a dot on a piece of paper, that's how big the eggs are. When she turns on her spermatheca and fertilizes the eggs, she's going to have a girl. If she takes and she shuts that off and has a non-fertile egg, it's going to turn into a drone or a boy. So as she goes through and smells the colony is giving her feedback on what everything smells like. If there's too much food, she'll start laying tons and tons of workers. When she gets to a satisfied point that she wants to swarm, she'll start laying the boys. And then that cycle just goes over and over and over. So she can turn it on and off at will. Her queen mandible pheromone is her QMP, and that's what tells the other bees what she has. So she secretes an oil from the back of her wings down through the back of her abdomen. When she does that, those are the other bees that are cleaning her, or her nurse bees that are feeding her, and they're spreading that smell and mimicking that smell, telling the colony, we have a good, healthy queen. We're doing really well. Keep on doing what you're doing. And there's loyalty built into that. Here's a number we always push also too, is 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. That's on the average. I've seen things up to 3,000 a day. And she lives 1 to 3 years. I've seen some queens, mated queens, artificially inseminated queens that live up to 3 to 4 years because we pump in 12 milliliters of semen. So that's what an egg looks like when she lays it. So that's, and that's blown up huge. When we're looking at comb, and I want to know that I have a good laying queen, I'm going to look down. If you have black foundation, and this is only if you have black foundation, the eggs will pop, and this is what you'll see. If you have real wax foundation or yellow foundation, it might take you, and please don't feel bad, because if you have to put on bifocals or trifocals or use a magnifying glass to see the eggs, you need to see the eggs, or at least an egg pattern, to know that you have a good, healthy queen in the last 24 hours. If I take anybody's hives, the best way to do it is to pull the frame up, tilt it up about a 10 degree because it's on an incline a little bit, tilt the frame, put the sun over my shoulders, let the sun shine into it, and then I can see on a black foundation, this is exactly what you see. As the eggs are standing completely straight up, she's laid those eggs within the last 12 hours. As it drops and you get a little puddle of royal jelly, this has been in the last 48. That means that egg has already emerged. And that little micro dot right here is that new bee that's being born. And then here's artificial insemination. And back to the eggs, if you need a magnifying glass, do not feel afraid to run and get a magnifying glass out, but you need to be able to see those eggs. So a little bit about the genetics. The queen has 16 alleles from her grandfather and her mother. If here's what she looks like, say this is a buckfast. When she goes out and mates, all these other drones have different genetics. And it could be, if there's tons of bees in the area, it could have different genetics of all one breed, but she will fly out past her drones at that half mile, 1 mile, and she'll go out to the mile, mile and a half to mate with other drones of other species. She will not mate with her own drones of her own because it's called inbreeding. And then when she lays a pattern, it's going to be shotgun. It's going to be a nasty, nasty setup. So when you go out, and that's when you look at your workers, if you pull up a frame of bees and you're looking at all the different colors of their butts or their abdomens, and they're all different colors, you know that there was a good DCA of these drones right here that were flying out at 100 or 75 to 100 feet. So what happens is if she lays a boy, so here comes the egg, she turns off her spermatheca, it's going to come down and she's going to have a haploid. A haploid means he's an absolute identical genetic offspring of his mother. If she goes out and she mates, now she gets an allele of her 16 of one of these boys that she mated with, making it 32, and then it comes down, and now we have a whole entire different color, maybe of this. She had the blue of the mother and the green of another father. And now I have a worker, and I have it diploid. That means it's a fertilized egg. In that same thing, this worker is only a worker by diet. So if I come down and I can graft this egg or this young larvae and put it in a different position and a different style and make this worker into a queen by my selection by manipulating the bees. And the only difference between a worker and a queen is when it comes down and the queen is fed royal jelly her entire life. That turns on, and it turns on all kinds of other alleles that makes the back end of her abdomen longer. It turns on the alleles to make her wings stronger, her thorax bigger, and give her 125 fallopian tubes on both sides and turn her into that. If she's not fed royal jelly, all bees are fed royal jelly for the first 3 days. But what happens with a worker is she's fed royal jelly for the first 3 days. Then in this string of diet, she's fed pollen, royal jelly. She's fed a mixture of bee bread, nectar, things like that. And that suppresses all these other genes that she could have been a queen, but now she's only a worker. So in the timetable for this is what you'll see with the eggs. Everybody's an egg for 3 days between the workers and the drones. In the larval state, right here, off to the left, you'll see that a very young curve is called a young larvae. As it gets bigger and fatter, this is a young larvae here. This is an older larvae, and they'll actually get bigger than that. The difference between a worker and drone is only 1 day. And the pupal stage is right here in the white. This is the pink-eyed version, and this is the purple-eyed version. And this is the last couple days that they're getting ready to emerge. Here's where the difference comes in. In this section, the girls are going to take 21 days before they emerge. And remember that blonde hair I was talking about? She has a little bit of the striping, but now we have all these little blonde bees walking around. So we know we have a good prodigy that the queen's laying. I have a good workforce that's coming out, and she's got a whole 4 to 6 weeks of her life to come out. The drones are the ones who sit around a little bit longer turn from the purple light. And when the drones come out, they have a little bit more color than the workers, but the same kind of blondness coloring look to it. Compared to a queen, so we've seen the cells here. If you'll look down in between, here's the orientation of the workers, and the bees know it, and they'll feed them according to that plan. Here's a queen cup. A queen cup is now vertically, and it looks like a raw peanut. So if you've ever eaten a raw peanut, and you'll see the little example down below that in the lower right, it looks like a raw peanut. So go to a grocery store and get a raw peanut. If you don't know what a raw peanut is, get to a grocery store and take a handful of them and take a mental picture of it. So when you look inside your colony and you see a raw peanut, you know there's another virgin queen getting ready to emerge, or there's something going on in your colony. That means you've been a bad beekeeper and you've let that colony get too compressed or too filled up at that 80, 90%. They think they've been overcrammed. They'll lay some queen cells and the colony's getting ready to swarm. Or you'll get in that colony, your notes will say, yes, they're building up. I have 4 frames of brood. Now I have 7 frames of brood. I got into it. Now I have 1 frame of brood and half of my bees are gone. What happened? They've swarmed. And what happens? Think about a coffee cup. A coffee cup, if you flip it over and it's empty, it's empty. This queen cup, all breeds of bees will have different cups. Some will have 1 or 2. Some will have 10 or 15. Depends. There's nothing wrong with that cup. If I take my hive tool and cut this cup out, guess what? They're just going to make another one. The problem is if I get in my colony and there's tons of bees and I look through all the gaps of bees, and I'll explain more about gapping. But if I look and that box is completely cram packed and I see this cup and I tilt it up and I look down inside and I see a milk and a maggot, which is a raw filled full of royal jelly in the milk, and I see a larvae in the center, there's a new queen. That means the old queen has flown the coop or left with half of the workforce, which your $180 just left. You're left with some workers in the new brood and these new queens. What she's going to do is she's going to eat the rest of this royal jelly. She's going to drop into the pupal stage. If you ever open it up and see the end of this peanut and it's completely cut open, like someone took a can, like the old style can opener where you had to turn around like a Boy Scout and you had to just nibble it all the way around. If you see this, that means you have a virgin queen running around within your colony. And at that point, just put it back together and just wait for 2 weeks. Give me a call or ask questions, because that new queen has to sexually mature. Her keratin on her body has to harden off for her exoskeleton, and then she's got to turn around and take a mating flight. So now you've turned around and lost 4 to 5 weeks, if not 6 weeks, of honey production and that colony building back up. I did not load that video yet. So I will show you this video here at the end, from egg to larvae to pupae to emergence, here in a minute. So our brood pattern. From your queen, and you want to make sure that they have a good pattern. This is like 1 in a million shot, where I had to take a picture of it because this was the best one I've ever seen. Everything in the center here is workers. These are all the girls that are in here. And you'll see this, 90% plus is all workers. You'll see queens that leave some holes open. These are called heater holes. And what happens is the bees, as they're walking around, they're taking the temperature, they're feeling the temperature. If the temperature starts to drop below that 90 some odd degrees, they'll stick their head, they'll crawl inside this hole, and they'll gyrate their body. They cannot heat themselves up. So think of taking your hand and just shake it in the air. You're not warming your hand up. But if you take your hands together as they're putting in the heater hole and they're crawling inside, and you rub your hands back and forth, you're creating friction. So as she crawls inside this hole and starts to gyrate, she's warming up 10 to 15 cells in this area to warm the cells back up. And you'll see this pattern. People say, well, is there something wrong? No. You'll see this in the springtime and also in the fall. In the summer, it'll be completely brood side to side, top to bottom. These raised shells, or these raised bullets here, looks like little 22 shells sitting in these little bubbles. Here's the drones. These are the boys. They need that extra room as far as the height, as far as their body and their size. So you'll see these cells are just a little bit bigger. These are 5.9, 5.7 to 5.9 millimeter compared to the girls here at 5.1. And then the boys will take 24 days to emerge. And again, look at the ratio, roughly 6% compared to everything else. And the opposite frame, or the side on the other side, looked exactly that. In the top edge, here is your honey dome. That's what honey looks like. It's not if you see the perforations here, every cell has one little square where each bee is going to come out. When you see honey, it's kind of glazed over. It's kind of, the cappings are kind of watery, and they're all mixed together a little bit. When the queen lays and the bees are storing honey above, they'll take this honey dome, and they're telling the queen, you can't go up here to lay anymore. There's still a chance. Mother Nature will always change that for us. But 99% of the time, the queen will come up and lay along this edge, and she'll stay down from there to the bottom box and keep laying eggs. This honey dome is telling the bees from here up, we need to store nectar, and that's where all our stuff's going to sit. Sometimes what's lacking in this picture is some pollen. So around this edge of this football, if you think of this arc, there should be pollen inside of here of all different colors. But on this one, they had grown up so much, I think that was a frame of foundation. I think the back frame behind that had a lot of pollen in it. So wherever you see brood, you'll see pollen right next door. That's a healthy pattern of a nice queen. She's laying well. They're doing what they need to do. There's a good thing of drones, which tells me that they're growing. There's capped honey, which there's tons of resources. So I would sign off that this is a grade 4 or 5 on a queen. Compared to this is called a shotgun pattern. This could be because of inbreeding, disease, something else going on. There's only a little cluster of bees here with a little queen here. She's trying to lay. Nobody's out here feeding these bees. And I see open cells here with dead larvae inside. Different colors, the different color cappings is not so, but the pattern, it's not consistent. There's not tiny heater holes. It's all over the place. It's sporadic. A few different things. She could be running out of sperm in her spermatheca. She could be a failing queen, a health condition. It's all over the place. And now I have some dead brood. That would automatically, for me as an inspector, think that there could be a European foul brood with this. So there's different things, but this is not a healthy. This is called a shotgun pattern. This is what you should see in any colony. As a small nuke, we're going to see eggs here, young larvae here that are nice, white, and creamy. You're going to see the eggs. You're going to see the older ones here, and then the caps. And this is actually where they're capping it. Here's our nectar, our pollen. You see orange, yellow, brown, a little bit of burgundy. And you'll see that little football that I was talking about earlier, that football around the top edge. This is where they're eating bee bread, and they're feeding it right to the larvae, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. It's like having the kitchen and the nursery right beside each other. And then up top, you have some darker honey up top that's been capped. This is what you want to see. All those larvae should look nice, white, and creamy. If you remember those 3 words, every time you do an inspection, look at the brood, nice, white, and creamy. Compared to this. This is powdery. This is chalk brood that's flowered up. You'll see dead larvae up here. You'll see all old dead stuff here, dead larvae here. Here's some larvae. Yellow, black, melded in, twisted. The cappings melded into here. There's a couple white cells, but everything else is an opposite color. If you look at the convex that are U-shaped, so they're sunken in, there's some sunken in ones there, sunken in here. Sometimes you'll see 1 or 2 pinholes in a bunch of cells. This is European foul brood. If you to run it in your hives every week to week and a half, and you see a little tiny part of this, if you do catch a disease and you see it on one frame, the best thing to do is take that frame and burn it, get it away. Don't just throw it in the trash or throw it out in the field, because they'll just rob it back out and bring it back to you, and then they'll spread it out in all your hives. Take this frame, wrap it up in a garbage bag, burn it, get rid of it, and you've probably just saved your entire 100,000 bees. You've saved all your honey. You've saved the entire colony. What happens is somebody sees a little piece of this, of European foul brood or chalk brood, and then they don't check their hive for 3 weeks. So what's it doing? The nurse bees are actually trying to clean this out and regurgitating food, and then they're feeding the next one. So imagine if your mother is sick and she feeds you and she has to regurgitate the food to you like a baby bird, and she's sick and now she's going to feed your other one, your offspring, off of that. It just keeps expanding, expanding, expanding. So this is something that by the time, and I can tell as an inspector, I've done it for years. When I come and inspect your hives, if you're in Defiance County, and I always ask the questions, when's the last time you've been in your hives? If I see somebody stutter or they don't look at me eye to eye and they look off the side and you hear them kind of guessing, maybe a week or two, and you open it up and the entire colony's like this, they haven't touched that entire colony for over a month. And this is how it can get away from you. Same way with chalk brood, same way with any of these diseases. They'll come on very, very slow, so you need to look for things. Always look for brood. When you're doing a hive inspection, if you see 2 solid frames of brood that looks like this, you know you're fine. Most of the brood problems are going to show up in this larval stage right here. And that's where you'll start to see this. If I seen this in a little cluster right here, no matter what's on it, get rid of the frame, shake the bees off, get rid of it, and keep monitoring. If it gets to this stage, now I'm talking about starting the entire colony over and having to start from scratch. Our biggest and our most deadliest killer is Varroa destructor. If anybody tells you any difference, I will go toe-to-toe with them. Varroa came in 1988. It's the year after I graduated. It decimated. We had over 6 million beekeepers in the United States, and it knocked it down to 1.2 million beekeepers in the United States. It decimates everything. There's people that say, I have Russian bees and I don't have Varroa. Every bee, every type of bee has Varroa. It digs into the skeleton. So what they do when they're writing up here, this is in the larval stage. It's not the mite that kills the bees. It's the cuticles in the front that actually dig into the flesh. It's like a tick for us. So imagine a paper plate sitting on the back end of your body, underneath your belly, digging at your flesh, eating the fat body off you. And as she eats, she's like a fly, and she regurgitates, and it liquefies it, and then she sucks it back up, kind of like a fly. As she's doing that, she's transmitting up to 20 diseases. And I apologize, I did not change this. This is now up to 28 in the last year that they've actually made or found out. They actually crawl in the larval stage, and they're eating off this body as a pupae, and they're eating the flesh off of this. So as the bee comes out, this is what she has. The biggest sign is K-wing, which is the 2 wings that are laying off to the left, and then all of a sudden off to the right, you'll see the wings are spread apart in a K. That's the first sign about you'll see. And after that, you'll see deformed wing virus. So is this bee going to be productive and make you honey and nectar and pollen and raise the next generation? She's going to live for about 20 hours and then she's going to die. At this point, if you take an alcohol wash, your mite count's going to be 40, 50, and the colony's going to die. Same thing. You didn't do an alcohol wash. You weren't in your bees. And at this point, the only thing you could do is do a Hail Mary, put in Apivar, Apistan, HopGuard, something like that, and try to get your bees back. But your honey production at that point is probably going to be 0 or none. They're actually in the hemolymph, they're in the blood, in the vitagelin, in the bees, and deformed wing virus. I hate to tell people this, but it's the easiest way as an inspector. If you can do it with a mason jar, and I'll get those screens out to everybody. You can do it with a mason jar and do it cheap. The Varroa Easy Check is about $19, but it's a way to take 200 or 300 bees, a half a cup of bees, and we'll do this. We'll do it hands-on together so everybody understands this. But you take alcohol, rubbing alcohol, which is going to be hard to find because of what's going on right now. You can buy windshield wiper fluid for 99 cents at the auto dealer. It'll do the same thing. You fill it up right below the label, up in this middle screen about halfway up. You'll actually take a half a cup. So if you do laundry detergent, those are just about half a cup. Do not go into your mother's kitchen or your wife's kitchen and get a measuring cup from her and use it on bees and give it back to her. Been there, done that. Makes a unhappy wife and an unhappy life. So go out and get your own stuff and mark it as bee gear. But you're going to take a half a cup of bees from the brood area. You're going to put them inside. You're going to shake this container up with the windshield wiper fluid or alcohol. Then you're going to try and look at the bottom of this, and here's your mite count. USDA says the mite count maximum, all the science they've done, is 9 per 300, or 3 mites per 100 bees if you're going to take a smaller sample. Do you see 9 mites or less? That's 161, 162, I think. This colony, all the bees, all the baby bees had no wings. I took a toothpick and popped open some of the cells to see what the brood looked like. Every one that I popped open, 6 and 7 varroa were crawling out. He lost 3 beautiful, beautiful hives he had the year before. His mother got sick, and he just couldn't take care of his bees anymore, and that's what happened. This is my sample off to the right, but you still see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which I needed to treat. When I took him down to Tennessee 2 years ago, I took 100 hives down to Tennessee, and that was my alcohol, so I treated with Mite Away quick strips. But knowing what to do, this is probably the easiest. I'll show you just an easier way. If you don't want to spend the $20, you can do it with a mason jar, and I'll show you the ways to do that. In the front of your binder, you have the Honeybee Health Coalition book. This is going to help you understand all of this. This is where 99% of the beekeepers go wrong. They use the wrong chemical at the wrong thing. Every chemical has its own safety PPE, which is personal protection equipment. Mite Away quick strips, you need nitro gloves and a respirator. If you open that up and you catch a whiff of it, it will take you down to your knees. The biggest grown man that I know is myself. It dropped me to my knees, brought tears, and it sucks the oxygen out of your lungs. There's things you need to do. A respirator, bee downwind, nitro gloves. It'll give you chemical burns. Apistan and Apigard, or Apistan and Apigard, yes, Apigard is another one. Mighty Mite Seed, there's some heaters underneath. Oxalic acid, you need to have a vaporizer and a mask. Apivar, you need to have at least 2 layers of nitro gloves on. So please ask questions, understand what you're working with, and follow the directions on the container. This is a great hobby. I wouldn't have it any other way. I've probably spent easily $80,000 on all my bee gear and what I do, but it is not worth somebody's life. So please take the precautions on this. The pest disease. These are probably the easiest to take care of, but they can also get away from you the fastest also, is the hive beetles. Hive beetles are, if you have your hives in the shade, if you have them in tall grass, if you're not in your colony, if you have a little tiny colony and you threw on too many boxes and the bees can't protect it. What hive beetles do, they have a harder shell that the bees cannot chew through. They can actually, if they're trapped, they can actually take their cuticles on the top, pedicles on the top. They stroke the front end of the bees on the antenna, and the bees will regurgitate royal jelly. So they've got everything down. They can mimic the smell of a bee, so they can walk around, do what they want. These are usually going to be in the top bars in the shaded area of your colony. So when you open up the telescoping cover, they're going to be on top or they're going to be on the bottom board, and they're just munching around, and what they're looking for is areas of pollen. What she'll do then, she'll take her oval depositor on a female, she'll shove it into the pollen, and then you'll get these creepy crawlies with her maggots on the outside. All kinds, she'll lay up to 1,000 eggs, and this is what you'll see. As they crawl around, they're consuming the honey, the nectar, the pollen, and their excrement or crap will actually ferment the honey. This, by the last picture on your right, there's frames like you see on the top over here on the second picture. There's frames underneath all this mess. A lady called me, said her hive had goo pouring out of it. I went over, she hadn't checked her bees in over a month and a half, opened up the top, and this is the picture I took. there were hundreds of thousands of millions of maggots crawling around in 3 deeps in a medium. And then what we done is we opened it up to the sunlight, poured gasoline on it, and burned it. And she had no problem. She said, I had no idea that this could get away from me. This is not checking your bees. If you see 1 or 2 hive beetle running around, this season usually takes off between June, July, and August. When I usually do it for BSBA, I'll do it for you guys too. When I start seeing this buildup, then we start talking about treatments. The hive beetle traps. You take vegetable oil, you pour it into this, the very bottom, I mean, just a 1/4 of an inch. You don't need to fill it all the way up. You actually drop it between the frames. Microfiber, if you know what microfiber rags are, when you touch them, it feels like they're doing little mini cuts on your hands. Harbor Freight sells a pack of them for $5. You take some scissors and cut them into strips, and then you put them along the end bars. You can see where the frame sat this way along that, and you can see the hive beetle that I caught. Drone comb, you can use that too to help trap them in. If it does get out of control, there's a ground soak that you mix. You mix 2 fluid ounces per gallon. Spray it on your soil around your hives at night, because what happens is these pupae, they'll emerge. They get large enough to where they get ready to pupate. They'll crawl out of the hive at night. They'll hit the soil. When they hit the soil, about 2 weeks later, she comes out. She'll mate. She'll come back and lay another 1,000 eggs. And that cycle will go over and over and over. The ground soak actually has a paramythin in it that'll actually, when she hits the soil-borne, it helps break it down, and then she'll turn around and die in the soil. So if you start having a problem, keep the grass mowed tight around the area, have a barrier around it with some gravel, anything else you want to do. If it gets away from you, then we start talking about this. Wax moth, probably you'll have this problem or you won't have this problem. If your neighbor has this problem, you're going to have this problem. Wax moth is just, there's a lesser and a greater. This is what the wax moth looks like. They come out at night and they look for hives that are crashing or there's too much room. So if you have a little tiny colony and you put this gigantic box of honey on top and there's not enough bees to protect it, she'll do the same thing. She crawls over. She'll crawl inside, look for the pollen, take her oval depositor, lay up to 3,000 eggs on top. And then as the larvae, they're much larger than hive beetle, as she goes around, they eat all the wax and pollen out of the frame. As they crawl, they make this spider web nasty stuff, and all the little black pieces on top is all their frass. So as they're eating, their rear end constantly spins this cocoon stuff, and then the crap just falls out and they just keep eating. I've seen people that open up a box that had 10 frames of drone comb to open it up, and the only thing it's left is the wood. And what they do then is they eat the wood in the top. They munch into the wood a little bit. They spin a cocoon, and then they pupate out. And then within a month, all of these will come out, and they'll go out and lay the next generation and next generation after that. So this is a gentleman who had bee gear back in the woods. He kind of let the bees go. All of a sudden, he started having problems in his other bees. Popped this one open, and then that's what we saw. And there was probably 3,000-4,000 of them between that and the other boxes. And you can see they were sun bleached, and there's nothing left. The thing to do on this, when we talked about the drone foundation, that is the most critical thing that you want. As a first-year beekeeper, most of your bee gear is going to be on your hives. Your second and third year, as you extract honey and you put stuff in the garage and you're putting drone comb away and you don't use those resources, get moth crystals, not moth balls. Paradichlorobenzene, if I said that correctly, is what you're looking for. So go to Walmart. Enzo's has it for $2 and some odd cents. What you're going to do, you're not going to put this in the hive, and repeat, not in the hive. But the frames that you're going to bring in from outside and store for the winter in the garage, if you have any type of drawn comb on it, what you're going to do as soon as you bring it in the garage If you look at the center photo, you're going to lay a piece of newspaper on the top, take just a few crystals, shake them on the top of this pile, and then put a telescoping hard top on. So you're going to put it on a solid bottom, solid concrete. Don't jack it up where mice and stuff can get up underneath it. And then a solid top and some moth crystals on the inside. What that does, it keeps out the lesser and greater moth or wax moth. At the end of the season, after we get into winter time, everything else, these crystals will break down. In the springtime, you get ready to use it. You're just going to take that box, set it out in the sunlight, kind of set them off 45, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, so the air can get through it. Leave it out for 2 or 3 days. Everything is there, and it off gases, and there's nothing left. The bees will crawl back down inside of it, everything else. If you use moth balls, instead of this P, it's going to be a D. The D chemical actually gets absorbed into the wax, and then the bees will never touch that comb again. You can't even get them near it. As a smell, there's something into it, or the chemical gets into the wax. It will not off gas, and then you might as well just chuck everything away. So a huge thing. This is only a preventative for stored gear in your honey house, in your garage, barn, or wherever you're going to put your gear at. Another good way to do that is to buy Tupperware containers like the ones that slide underneath your bed, or a box or something that you want to build that you can seal up, or it has lockable things into it, so you can lock it down. If you have a lockable container, you could put your frames inside, lay a piece of newspaper off the side, put some moth crystals, lock it closed, and you're doing the same thing. This, I'm just trying to use the boxes and everything in a stack. And storing it again, storing equipment only. So if we were in the classroom, pop quiz, but this is the wax moth, much larger, less time to pupate, and then the smaller, greater for the hive beetle. Now we're going to go through a depressing part. So I want you to we're not going to go through all of it, and I don't expect you to remember it, but take some notes. And I want you to take a highlighter, and I want you to highlight some of these things on here. Chalk brood is only a springtime problem. You'll see the mummies, if you start having an overwintered hive, if there's high moisture, like last year, we had a huge problem in Defiance all over Ohio, in fact, because it was wet, cold, and rainy all the way up till June. The farmers weren't in the fields. The bees couldn't get rid of the excess moisture. Their colonies weren't building up. They couldn't get out and get any pollen. So you started seeing fungal problems. It's chalky white or gray. As they start to pupate, they get this fungus, and it just turns them into a gigantic corpse. And here's where I want you to highlight: transmitted by contaminated pollen or drifting. What that means is the bees, maybe there was a dead out at your neighbor's, there was a dead out in a tree, there was something else going on. The bees went out to forage. Remember, they love to work, but they're also opportunists. They went out and found a colony that was dead. Somebody didn't take care of it, or maybe it was in a natural hive in a tree. They brought it back by contaminated pollen, by stealing resources from another colony. They brought it back, and now you have it. The fungus grows when the brood has been chilled, cold, wet, rainy. You will not see this problem in the summer or in the fall. I've never seen it in the fall. You'll always usually a springtime problem. The prevention. Remember I said the hive stands. Keep well ventilated to prevent dampness. If you have your hives, and I have seen it over and over, a person says, well, I'm just going to take the colony and set it on the ground. They'll do okay. That person, 99% of the time, will have chalk brood problems. As soon as you take that colony, jack it in the air, put it on hive stand, cylinder blocks, it goes away. If you see this, it looks just like someone took a piece of chalk and shoved it inside of a cell. And you'll see 1 or 2 of them. If I see 1, 2, 3, let the bees kind of take care of it, that's fine. If you want to take a hive tool and scratch it out, you're even better yet. If it flowers like this, all of these spores are on the outside, and each spore only has to get in to produce this again. And it just keeps going and going. A really strong hive with high numbers of nurse bees will regulate the temperature. So if you have a strong colony, you have it crunched down. If you have a small colony, remember small area. If that box or that first box gets to 80, 90%, you put on another box, keep them nice and tight. Keep the entrance down. They will regulate and warm up that colony, and they'll beat the spore, and they won't be chilled anymore. And the same thing here, springtime and food stresses. Right now, everything. I've seen the maples in bloom. I've seen almost everything in bloom right now. Willows are really taking off. Eastern redbud is just starting. So everything is on the way. So there's going to be no food stresses. We're not getting any chilled nights. We have this cold front coming in, but we're just talking where it's getting chilled, not a consistent. If it's consistent like we are the next few days, they just cluster together and they'll be fine. Sac brood. It's a viral disease, plastic-like sac, and you'll see this. It looks like the larvae's been dipped in like carnauba car wax. Here's where to highlight: robbing from infested bees. An infected food supply. Your bees went out and found something to get into, a neighbor, other hive, something else, and brought it back. If you see any cells that are twisted like this, waxy, even the tongue is stuck to the top, instantly throw that away. Sac brood will go through a colony like absolute wildfire, and it'll infect an entire colony in a very short time. Take the frame. I would take this frame here and the frame that was beside it on this side. So I would take these two frames and chuck both those frames. Prevention usually occurs during brood rearing season. So what's this spring doing with all this pollen coming in? Exactly that, brood rearing season. When the colony's under stress from food shortage or inclement weather, again, this cold front coming through, and avoid robbing. Nosema apis, it's a fungal disease. You usually see this in the springtime when the bees, so in your beehive, for those that have kept bees, from the time it gets cold at 50 degrees, the bees go in and they cluster up, and they don't usually come out till it's over 50 to take a cleansing fight. So imagine in the fall that I tell you, go ahead and eat as much as you can, and then you can't go to the bathroom until it's 50 degrees in the springtime. That's what happens. And it's basically they get the craps. They eat too much fiber, somebody's fed them too much pollen, and in their stomach, you'll see this Nosema apis, and it starts to grow. It's like a bacterial infection, but it's through fungus. And what it does, they'll turn around and do this, and they'll start to crap on the inside of the colony. If you see this, I would instantly throw away this frame, this frame, this frame, and this frame. Those four would go, because this is a gut problem. If the next nurse bee or house bee has to clean that up, what is she cleaning it up with? Her mouth and her tongue, and she's digesting it, leading to the next generation having it, leading to the next generation that she's raising. If you can take a hive tool and scrape this off down to bare wood, I mean scraping hard, and it cleans 99% of it off, then go ahead and keep the frame. They'll clean up a little bit. They can handle a little bit. But I would not put this into the next colony and go buy a nuke and say, well, I'm going to use these frames, because if it was if I spent $180 on a nuke and put these frames inside, I will guarantee you they'll last about 2 generations and the whole colony will crash. You can test for this. You take 10 nurse bees or house bees, you put them in a Ziploc bag, and you use one microliter of water per bee, put them in a Ziploc bag, take a rolling pin or a hammer or something and crush the bees up to where you don't hear any more crushing, to where it just sounds like it's just mush. Randy Oliver takes a little tiny rolling pin and rolls it back and forth until they're done popping. So you're blowing their guts up, you're blowing their heads up, and that's where all these microbes sit. And then you put it underneath a microscope. This is a mild or moderate condition. So you'll see the microbes in here. Sometimes you'll open this up and the entire slide is all filled with microbes. That's a high one. That's when you start to see all this diarrhea on the top. Nosema cerana is its sister disease. And this symptom, the older bees just simply disappear. So in this gut problem, they know there's something wrong with them. What they'll do is all your foragers, each set of foragers, as they become foragers in the age prodigy, they'll just disappear. They don't come back. So in your notes, remember when I talked about notes and taking journals, always make notes every time you go out to the apiary. Even if you have to you can take a Japanese grease pencil and write on the top of the telescoping cover. Queen, put a Q with a check. That means you know you have a good queen and you have eggs. You had bee with a check. That means you had good brood. And then when you go inside, you can use electrical device, cell phone, pictures, anything else. Record what's going on so you have records of what's going on. So if I turn around and said, okay, this month I had a queen with a check, I had bee with a check, I had frames of pollen with a check, and I had, say, brood, I had 4 frames with a check mark. If I go out next month and there's only 1 frame of brood left and there's no more pollen and there's nothing else, I know I'm going backwards in time. Something is taking effect to that. Maybe the queen left and took most of that. Maybe the broods all emerged and the colony split and she swarmed. So you have to have some continuity of what's going on. And I will promise you, in the 12 years of beekeeping, I'm not as good as my wife is, but every hive I have on the top telescoping cover has all my notes. It has, and this is my shorthand. It doesn't mean it has to be yours. It has the day's date that I inspect, say 5/7, January or May 5th, or May 7th, 5/7. I'll put a queen with a check. I'll put bee, and then how many frames of brood that I have with a check. Pollen, I'll put a check. And then I'll run and go through, and I have that's my shorthand. And then when I get inside, and what I convey that to D then is, this is what we had, blah, 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 blah. And D turns around and has her cell phone on and just records it. When we get inside then I take some notes so I know which ones I have to. There's some other methods you could use, but find a method that works for you, that you can take good notes, because anytime in that position, if I start having problems and I go, well, what was my mite count? Oh, 9. And I didn't have enough brood and this and that. Well, all of a sudden, maybe you're getting deformed wing virus. Maybe there's something going on. So this is going to tell you it's not seasonal, but it's a summertime issue, suppresses the immune system, and it's been recognized since 2000. And we've seen a buildup of this over the years. European foul brood. And this is, again, I want you to look at the lower slide. There's one white creamy white, or well, let's see, two nice white creamy eggs or larvae. I see one that's been melted down into the slag, one that's actually twisted, looks like a corkscrew. Here's the queen, she's still laying eggs, she's trying to outrun the disease. Black, brown, twisted, dead. That one's melted, that one's melted in, this one's melted into a little scab. This is what you're going to see with European foul brood. If you want to know the difference, take a little twig, or I usually have toothpicks in my pocket all the time, or a little branch of Timothy or anything, shove it inside this liquefied cell right here, take that stick, shove it in, mix it up like a little blender. When you pull it out, it's called the ropiness test. If you pull that out and it's less than a ½ inch and has a snotty appearance, so think, and the only way I can laugh at this, a booger on a stick, and it's sticky and slimy. If you pull it out and it breaks less than 1/2 inch, that is a telltale sign that it's European foul brood. Sometimes, not all the times, it'll have a sour smell to it. I've never smelled the sour smell, but I've been in European foul brood. It has a rubbery, it's like ectoplasm type thing. The appearance, twisted, yellow, dull, black trachea tubes, and you'll see all kinds of stuff with it. Again, highlight this, contaminated food. House bees cleaned out dead larvae. On the front, robbing from infested beehives. This is something that if somebody in the area has problems, you're going to have problems. All of a sudden, you look at the front entrance and you'll see tons of dead larvae laying all over, and they're twisted and yellow and black and this and that. You don't even have to get in the hive, and I can tell you instantly what happens. Everything now, since last in 2000, they have the veterinary feed directive. It's called the VFD. You can, if you know a vet Veterinarians do not, repeat, in this, at least this region, do not want to be in your bees. They have not been trained in bees. They don't like bees. They like horses and fluffy things and things like that. You must, if you want to do an antibiotic, you must have a prescription for it. And then there's different things they're going to tell you to do. There's terramycin, there's oxytetracycline, there's a bunch of different chemicals. You can do different doses. They'll tell you that, but you have to have this prescription to order it. You can order it from Man Lake. You can order it from other places. Town and Country in Bryan has it. I don't think TSC and Defiance has it anymore because of the laws they have to, and the hoops they got to jump through. I do know 2 vets that will do it. If I come to your house and say, yes, you do have it, they'll write me a prescription for you to do it that way. But I have to do it under the Defiance County Apiary Inspection Program. So you can't just take chemicals and put it in, because back when that law started, if there's too many antibiotics that people are just pouring in. Honeybees were going to be the exemption of that rule. And then at the end, the Senate turned around and said, yes, we're going to be a part of it. American foul brood. This is the worst of the worst. Look down inside here again. Look at the pinholes. Melted. The larvae actually melted in. Black, dead, twisted, sunken cappings. This is a coffee color, ropey with a fine thread. Again, toothpick, whatever you want. You mix it up and you pull it out. If it goes to a fine thread at 1 inch or more, 99% of the time it's European or American foul brood. There are cases up in Williams County, there's some. Over in Fulton County, there's some that when we test it, it looks exactly like, smells like, acts like American foul brood. We send it off to Beltsville, which I can send the test off for you, or you can do it yourself. You put in your apiary number, your registration, you put in your location, you send it to Beltsville. The only thing cost you have into it is sending it. You have to have the sample sent the right way, and we'll go through more of that later. But you send it off, and they'll send you back a breakdown of everything that's wrong with that colony. You have to cut out a section of brood, 4 inch by 4 inch. So in this, I would take a knife and cut a 4 inch by 4 inch area out. I would put it in a cassette. Don't put it in a flat envelope, because by the time they get it, it's going to be mushed out to flatness. You could take a Q-tip, shove it down in this cell with this dead larvae, spin the Q-tip around back and forth, put it in a clean Ziploc, send that. But the biggest thing with this is the sulfurous chicken house. If you've ever been around tons of chickens and you smell that odorous smell, that sulfur smell, but if you're an inspector or you go out to your bees and nobody in your area has chickens or the chicken coop smell, and you get out and walk up to the beehives and you smell chicken coop, you've got American foul brood. Again, I'll just cover the brown to black, and it's brittle. These things break off. It's after capping. It's a chocolate brown to black perforated cappings. Again, contaminated equipment, drifting or robbing, and 1 larvae killed by the disease. So this is 1 larvae. When it starts to bloom out, and when that spore blows up, it makes 100 million spores. Only a few spores are needed to kill the next larvae. So your bee comes over to this hive, and there's some pollen in here, and she picks up 1 spore, 1 or 2 spores, and flies back to your colony. Guess what? It only takes a matter of about 2 or 3 weeks, and now all of a sudden, every colony in your yard will have American foul brood. I am sorry to say this, but there's only one best method of treatment, and that's by burning. We used to say in a burn barrel that it is no longer effective because I think it was Cincinnati or Columbus. I know it was a C. I'm not sure right now, 100%. But they were using burn barrels. A guy burned a bunch of stuff. The next year, he lost tons more hives and affected everybody in the area. So ODA came back 2 years ago with the inspector program and said, now we have to dig a pit, burn the gear. I have to be there to sign off on it. We burn the gear. We put everything back on top of it and hope for the best at that point. Everything's down underneath the ground. Hopefully the microbes and everything take care of it from there. So I will unmute everybody. So in the first slide off to the upper left, what do we have?
Chalk.
Chalk brood.
Chalk
Chalk
brood.
brood. Remember, just it looks like somebody took a little thing of chalk, shoved it inside. Sometimes if it's in the later stages, you'll see it to flower up. Upper middle.
Scarf.
We have yellow larvae. We
Scarf.
have a little bit of twisted.
European.
No, scarf brood. Scarf brood.
They're all foul broods.
Oh,
This is
European.
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 Yeah,
That's
European. The queen is still trying to outlay, but you see that yellowish. That yellowish is usually, and they're melted. The difference between European and American on this is I can take a toothpick and pop that scabby or that melted larvae off on European, and it'll pop right off. American, it actually melts into the wax. And when I go to pop it off, it'll actually tear the comb out. Upper right.
American.
Okay. Tell me the difference between the two on the ropiness.
Looks like it's longer, and longer than it would be European, and the color.
Yes. Remember, a 1/2 inch for European. If it pulls over an inch and a half, then it's American.
So what did you say that was?
This one's European.
Okay.
American.
European.
Oh, it's
that one's European.
Yep, that one's European.
Because
Okay.
it's a 1/2 inch.
But if it's under the 1/2 inch, but if you would rope this out, see how it's getting ready to break and it's less. But if I would pull this out over an inch, it's American.
Okay.
The lower left.
Not sure.
Mandy, chime in, Mandy.
European.
I don't think so.
This could be European or American because of the sunken cappings. See how they're sunken in? They're not concave like they're domed. They're sunken in with pinholes. And that could be European or American. Center, lower.
American. American.
There's a telltale sign. The tongue is stuck to the top. Any other guesses? Sack brood.
Oh, sack brood.
That's when the tongue is stuck to the top. And the lower right.
Sack brood.
Sack brood.
Sack brood.
Sack
Very
brood.
good. Very good. So just know that this is what you're looking for. Any of these things that just do not look right. If you can turn around and just look at this, I don't mean to tease you with having a pop quiz on this, but I want you to just understand that there's oddities that this is not what you're looking for. This is what you're looking for.
So the
Clean.
last one in the corner was sack brood.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
If I see this is what I always want to see. Nice, white, creamy larvae, healthy brood, nice eggs. The prodigy of eggs, young larvae, old larvae, cat brood. Tons of royal jelly. They're floating around in tons of royal jelly. They're really nice. If I constantly see that as a new beekeeper, okay, coming out of the gate, you will probably have a 95% chance that you'll never see this problem unless you have a neighbor that has this problem. If you're kind of isolated and you're starting out with 1 or 2 hives, you might not see this for 3 years. But somewhere down the line, you're going to have a feral hive that crashes, something that goes on. But remember, as soon as you see it at this point, if I don't see nice, white, creamy, wet larvae, and I start to see, go back one. If I start to see this, any part of this, instantly react, ask questions, take pictures, chuck the frames, do what you need to do. But remember, a lot of these are fungal and viral. So even if you take care of it today, I would still monitor that colony, put a thumbtack, take a black felt tip marker, and put an X where you pull the old frames out, put an X on the box so you know roughly where it was last time. When you go back, or the frames that were on each other side of that, take a black or the little thumbtacks and push a thumbtack in the top of that frame. So you know where it was roughly last time you inspected and you took care of them 2 frames. And when you pull those frames up, see if you see any more of that. 90% of the time, if you catch it early in a little tiny, say a 50-cent piece, and all of a sudden it started to go wrong in one little area, you get rid of those 2 frames, the one it's between and the other one, you've taken care of the problem. You'll never see it again. But if you're not in your bees and you wait a month and a half, 2 months, by the time you pull it open, your entire hive is going to look like that than it is with this.
Does the black foundation tend to make it easier to inspect?
The black foundation lets it pop a little bit easier if you have a little bit poor eyesight. You know, I have bifocals, and I've got to the point with bifocals because I have to graft in that. This maybe 2 years ago now, I always used to run real foundation or real wax foundation. And then with my eyesight getting a little bit worse, and then I got bifocals, I thought, oh, I'm going to switch to black foundation. It makes it a little bit easier for me. One day, all of a sudden, I heard my wife scream behind me, and I thought, oh, my God, she got stung. And she goes, I can see eggs. I'm like, are you serious? For the first time, she was able to see eggs because we switched to black foundation. And it makes things just a little bit easier, especially if you have the sunlight over your shoulder and you're looking down in the cell. That black just makes it pop, and you can see you can see young eggs. It's just like this. You can see these. This is just the sunlight, and I just took my cell phone and took a picture. It just makes things a lot easier for everybody. Any questions, anybody?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
How frequently should we be checking for the mites? Is it every time we're in the bees, or is that once a month?
Once a month.
Once a month.
Try to get into the habit of the first of every month when you pay your bills, or the last of every month. If you're constantly, and I won't go through the whole get on the soapbox thing, but if you start in May and you turn on check every month, I'm going to say that this is exactly like going to the doctors. You're going to the doctors. You don't go to the doctors and say, give me a penicillin shot, or give me this, or give me steroids, or a Z-Pack, or this or that. All you're doing is monitoring the health of the bees, because what some people do is treat prophylactically. That means they just automatically in the springtime put chemicals in. If my bees have a mite load that's under the 9 and they're doing healthy, why do I want to put chemicals inside my colony? So no matter what, you're trying to kill an insect on an insect. So you're hurting your bees no matter what. The best thing to do is to monitor that if that colony starts to get up to say 2, okay, you know at 2, the mites are doubling their population every month, or excuse me, the varroa. So if it was 2 today, and next month it's automatically, because of the cycle of it, it's going to be 4. If we start getting tons and tons of drones, then the population kicks up to about 1/3. So if it's 2 now and I have tons and tons of drones, it might kick up to 6. It's going to go more than double, because when the mite cycle in a worker brood, she gets 1.8 daughters out. That means she only gets 1 healthy daughter that is reproductive. Her shell hardens off and she's able to crawl out and survive. If it's in a drone, that's 24 days, she actually gets out 2.3 daughters. So 2 healthy daughters and the other one still in the soft white stage, and she dies as soon as he emerges. So if I monitor that, and let's say we go from, just say we had May, we had 3. So in June, automatically it's going to be 6. But now with drones, you might be a 7 or an 8. And the honey's still coming in. and you want the honey, you're doing it for honey, and you want to turn on treat with a chemical that's not going to hurt that. Then you need to go back to the Honeybee Health Coalition book, come to the bee meetings and go, this is what I'm doing. I want my honey. I don't want to hurt the bees. I don't want to set them back, but I have a mite count of this. And I know by next month, it's going to threshold of over the 9. Then we're going to recommend Hop Guard, which is a natural product. We're going to do Formic Pro, which is a natural product, or Mite Away Quick Strips. So those things are going to set back the mites, but it's still going to let your bees pull in pollen, do everything. If you told me I'm raising bees for bees, I don't want the honey, I don't want anything, I just want to make splits and I want to do things, then I would tell you, okay, take away the old queen, break the brood cycle. You could do it naturally that way. You could put in the green drone comb and let the drones come out and freeze those and kill those. Or you could turn around and use Apivar or Apistan, a harsh chemical, but you're not doing it for honey, because if you use the harsh chemicals, you cannot you cannot sell that honey for consumption. You could actually hurt somebody really bad doing it. So when you check every month, all you're doing is checking your level at what that threshold is, and then knowing what the weather's going to be, what's coming up, and what you're doing it for. You can make very educated guesses and say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I need. And the best part about this, so you people that are really, really techie, you can get on the Honeybee Health Coalition website, and guess what? There's an app for that. You can turn around and download the app, and it'll tell you, I'm doing this for honey, here's my mite load, here's the condition, here's what's going on. And it will give you recommendations back to the book on what to do and the PPE to use with that.
Jamie, do we start doing that in April or in May?
I would do that in May. Any of the nukes that are being sold have already been treated. I treated all mine in March. So anybody is buying a nuke, I wouldn't even worry about it for 2 months. And then
we check for how long, all the way up to October?
Every month. So either the first of the month, you just put it in your program and your scheduling. I mean, with everybody's life, what you're doing, set it up for every month, and then you'll see that elevation. So anybody that's been to BSBA, I make everybody come into the meeting and put their varroa mite counts up on the board. And 90% of the time, as everybody is climbing up, you'll see that guard of everything that's coming up with it. Everybody's at 2s and 3s at this next meeting that we'll probably have online. After that, all of a sudden you'll get them to 4s and 5s, and I make everybody do it. Then I take a picture of it and I put it in my Excel sheet, and I run my formulas out. And when I look at my map, if I can see individual people and all of a sudden somebody jumped to 15, I can usually tell that there's a doubt out or something in the area or something that has changed, and I can do recommendations that way. But
we do this up until like October, and then we don't do it during the winter, right?
No, because what you're doing, you're taking actual bees from the brood area.
Right.
Once it drops under 50 degrees, you should never be in your hives tearing things apart. You can pop the top and take a look and go, they have enough honey or they have enough nectar and things, but I need to do this, this, and this. I mean, it's okay to pop the top, but you should never, anything under 50 degrees, you should never be pulling out frames or breaking boxes apart. And then in October, by the time we get to that cold spell, that's when we have to be our real due diligence of getting that mite load all the way down to 1s and 2s. Then to get them through October, November, at Thanksgiving time when it's above 38 degrees. Then when they're brewed less, you do an oxalic treatment. They go through December, January, February, March. Guess what? You just come out with a colony, and you can, and I'm not saying take my word for it, at the BSBA meeting, or if you know any of the beekeepers in the club, the biggest problem with everybody right now is their colonies are actually bulging with bees, and they have tons and tons of bees and nothing, and they're running out of room. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna put one person on mute. So your biggest, I mean, your thing is to turn around and get all these bees through wintertime, is to turn around and have the best healthy bees that you can, and to go through season and be sustainable. So in the springtime now, everybody that had an overwintered hive, they can make a split and sell a nuke. Now you make back $170, $180. You could make one or you could make two. So there's an extra $360 in your pocket. Then you turn around and do that. You can still have a honey product. You can turn around and do some cut comb. And if you want to get a little bit of grafting, if you get some skills underneath your belt, do a little bit of grafting. And then guess what? You can make $40 per queen back in your pocket. So now instead of going all out the front all the time and spending, if you do a few key things, being in your bees is key. Varroa mite counts is key. And try and get some education. You'll turn around and within, I mean, you can ask the guys that graduated last year, their biggest problem this year is every one of them. In fact, everybody's been sending me pictures. We had a few people that had a die out, which I understand, and nobody's perfect. But for the most part, 90% of that class has bees up the wazoo. And we'll go through it. We're going to go through everything step by step, how to do an alcohol wash, how to do everything. So we'll be good to go. I promise you.
So should we have nuke boxes on hand just in case we do have some extra bees holding and know where to put them?
It is a good idea. When you buy the nuke from me, it's called a jester box. It's a white box. The recommendation, and you'll read this in all the bee books. The bee books that you guys got will have the same recommendations. For every 2 full hives that you have, you should have a nuke. The reason we have a nuke is because of 2 reasons. It gives me an extra queen, and it's a little tiny nucleus colony that's sitting off the side. You could put another box on top of it, and another box on top of that, and let it go 5/5/5. But in your full-size colony, if you killed the queen, if you had a problem, if something happened, you can go back to that nuke box and pull that queen out. There's some steps you have to take, but I could put it in that full-size colony and save the colony. I don't have to call on Jamie Walters and go, do you have queens? No, I'm sorry, I'm sold out. You got to call Tim. Tim, you call Tim. I have a wait list. And then all of a sudden you don't have any resources to do that. What you can also do in a nuke, you have raw foundation in a nucleus colony, put a 5 and put another empty 5 on the top and put a sugar water on the top and let them pull out the comb for you. Just use it as a workhorse. And as they pull out the drawn comb and then put them in your big hives and just keep switching it every 2 weeks, keep stealing things from them. And it's an extra colony that you can really use. And then in the winter time, in the fall time, say, hey, I have a winter nuke ready for fall. Does anybody want it? And sell it for $160, $170.
I'm trying to wrap my head around all this I just learned.
I know. And it is, and please don't get discouraged because there are so many different things you can do. And that's why I don't say, I recommend you have to have 5 nukes. But if you have the gear and you have the time and you don't mind being in your bees once a week and you're retired and you got time to do it, have 5 nukes and sell some queens, draws a bunch of comb out, put in a queen excluder and do some cut comb in the top and sell the little cassettes for $14 a piece and make some money at it. Or there's other beekeepers like last year's class. There was one couple that they just wanted 1 beehive out in their garden and they just wanted to keep bees. And now all of a sudden, now they got 4 hives. So.
Oh, Lord.
So it all depends on your goal with it. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Just enjoy yourself. Ask questions. Be safe about it first. Because I don't want anybody, sending me pictures that they're stung all up and everything else. But what we have going so far, and let me ask first. Anybody else have any other questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Everybody's good?
Yep.
All right. Hopefully, and I'm always the pessimist, glass half full. If we get out of May, and what we'll do, if this weather breaks, I'm going to turn around and I'll send out a sheet with a sign-up sheet. I'm going to be going out to the apiary here and start going out to the apiary. And what I'll just ask for is if 1 or 2 or 3 people want to come out, and then we'll do some hands-on stuff. Right now I have 6, 7, 8. I think I got 8 hives out the apiary right now. Plus I'm doing splits and raising some queens out there. We'll do some hands-on class if you want to come out. If there's other times that does not fit in your schedule, let me know, because I can move some things around a little bit. My schedule's a little flexible, and then we can go out and do some stuff. We'll have some hands-on that way. If I have the other 2 PowerPoints to you that we can go through, if we do not meet in May, we'll do another podcast like this, and then we'll have more of the one-on-one out at the apiary and do it that way. Anybody who ordered nukes or needs nukes, I'm going to have a list. If you want to, let me ask first, did most everybody get the BSBA invite for the host meeting on Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
Tuesday.
All right. Who said no?
this is Elizabeth. I think I did, but I'm not sure. Did that come from you in a separate email, right?
Yes. And
Okay.
it says BSBA monthly meeting with Roger Meyer.
Yep, got that one. Yep.
Okay. And Roger Meyer's going to host that kind of like this. We're just going to have some minutes of what's going on, how things are changed because of this virus thing going on and stay at home type thing. We still plan on doing our field event in June. We're going to push that off to maybe if it gets in the second week of May and it's still bad. What we're talking about doing is having a bee conference online. So we'll have it'll be a setup just like this. You can sit in your comfy chair, eat your best snacks, kick your feet up, and we're just going to have a whole lineup of presenters throughout the day, maybe every hour. Then we'll take a 10, 15-minute break. But we'll have Barb Letcher on, Dwight Wilson, Dwight Wells, Roger, myself, and we'll all be doing, and my wife's going to do one on rendering wax and doing crafts like lip balm, lipstick, soaps and things like that. And we'll just do it all virtual. I mean, I hope and I pray that we're all, we can kind of get this underway and get back and maybe not hugging and kissing and shaking hands, but at least being able to get socially moved around a little bit.
Yeah.
Jamie, I have a question. I'm
Yes,
looking
ma'am.
at this live seminar, WebR seminar training, and it says it's Sunday, April 12th, 7 p.m. Is that right?
Yes, that's the one that we're doing through OSBA, Ohio State Beekeepers
Okay,
Association.
so that's tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And just to let everybody know about that, I sent that link out to everybody. If you have the time, there's tons of stuff going on. Florida State just put one on. We were asked because of there was tons of clubs that never even got to finish. They had one of their beginner beekeeper courses and then they were shut down. Roger's doing his, I'm doing it with you guys. I'm doing one with Dwight Wilson. Ohio State approaching me because I'm an IT tech and I'm a broadcaster and I do talk shows and do podcasting. We're going to turn around and do it for OSBA. So if you're not a member or if you haven't liked the page, please go to Ohio State Beekeepers Association on Facebook. You can like it. You guys will automatically get the link because I send it out to you anyhow. But there's going to be a whole lineup. Alex Zomchek's going to be on, myself, Dave Noble's going to be talking about queens and doing splits. If you want to, it's going to be the same kind of way. You just join in. There's going to be a presenter, whole 9 yards. Until things kind of change around, I think this is going to hopefully it's not the norm, but it's going to be the normal for right now. And then we'll turn on but if you have health issues or anything else, I do not want to be the person who killed somebody off or killed a family or done anything else. So if you do have health issue problems, please do not come out to the apiary until we get some other precautions in. But the club is looking at, we're going to buy some respirators if we can get some. That way, if we do some hands-on training, I just bought 18 boxes of nitrile gloves. Bought some cloth respirators. I'm looking for some other respirators, but I'm not trying to do it right now with everything else going on. But if we do go out to the apiary and we're there, there'll be nitrile gloves, respirators, and everything for everybody. And we'll just kind of observe the social distancing and try to get through this year. And I apologize on the behalf of Corona.
Yeah, Jamie,
Yes, sir.
I just went through my emails. I think it's because I've been kind of left off the email list the last couple of times. I
Yep.
did not get. I am on for the Sunday webinar. I am not on for the Tuesday meeting. If you could send me that, I would
Yep.
appreciate it.
I will send that to you here in about 5 minutes, Bob.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I
And-
apologize, Bob. I didn't get the F in. I put P bets.
Oh, John, you mean me?
Yeah.
Oh, John. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
John.
Hey, don't worry about
So-
it. You're doing
so-
fine. Appreciate what you do.
I had 200 emails come in and I seen that. And then I sent the last one out. And then I seen when you registered for OSBA, I'm thinking PF. I'm like, PF. I thought I don't have the other address. So
FJ, yeah.
so I apologize.
Don't worry about it. You're fine.
If you guys
Jamie?
want to make up a class, if you want to go through these other PowerPoints, shoot me an email and maybe we can do this in 2 weeks on another Saturday and try to get some of this other stuff done because you guys started later. If you want to do another PowerPoint next week or something, I said 9 to 12 and I don't want to hold anybody too much over. I know you're not going anywhere.
Maybe.
Okay.
So
But
what you covered today is like for the March meeting and for the April meeting?
Well, it's March. There's usually 2 PowerPoints and then we go out to the apiary.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right.
Oh, and also too, Jamie, for tomorrow, for the one for Sunday night, I forgot to add in my email and phone number because I
No,
didn't
I
have my
got ya.
glasses on and I pushed the button.
Nope, I got you.
Okay.
I'm the one leading that up, and somebody called me, the person who's helping do the registration. And she says, this Gail sent something. She goes, but she's a friend of yours on Facebook. I said, I got Gail's address. Don't worry about it. But I'll send you guys all the pertinent information. I have an email started right now with everybody on here for Dwayne Hathaway's catalog. I will reach back out to the Hedges to get equipment and stuff to you guys. As far as I was in the bees on last Tuesday. The nukes are building up. The queens are on 1 frame of brood and they're building up really nice. I do not sell the nukes until she has 2 solid frames of brood. That way I know she's laying a good pattern. She hasn't kind of started up and then failed. The cold is going to set them back a little bit, but I got pollen on them and I got feeders on them. So they're going to be really good to go. So when I know about 4 or 5 days before that, I'll start calling people down through the list. And then what we'll do is the same thing I do every year. I have I'll send you my address. We just pull out to the big red barn, put on your suit, and we go out and I just open up hives. The best ones go first, and then I just kind of wait along with the other ones until they build up, and they just keep going out the door.
Jamie, like I said last night in my email, you feel free to make me one of the last ones more towards mid-May.
Okay.
That would probably work a little better towards me. Thank you.
Well, I can hang on to them longer.
Okay.
Because what I do is instead of having just a 5 frame, I just throw another box on top and make it up into 10.
I see.
So I can keep them longer. It's just getting them built up to at least have 2 good frames of brood.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thank you much.
Not a problem.
Jamie, do you know what the topic of conversation is going to be Sunday for the OSBA meeting?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to be presenting that, and that's going to be on spring management. So once you get your bees, what you're going to be looking for, how you're going to manipulate your hive, and then it's going to go into a little bit of we kind of sent out some feelers on different people, and they still want to go over how to introduce a nuke in a package, which you guys just went through that today, which will be kind of a refresher again if you want to see it. But it'll be kind of the same PowerPoint type thing along with hive inspection, what to look for, how to get in your hive, how to manipulate it and pull frames of brood up. So once you get that 5 frame box and she starts building up into the 7, 8 frame and you need to try and manipulate it, it goes over those steps how to do that.
Okay.
Anybody else? Miss Lisa? You look content. So let me ask this. Does everybody have their gear built up and ready to go?
I do.
Yes.
Lisa.
We
I see
don't.
Lisa shaking her head no. Okay. I will get a hold of Hedges after this. I will call you and we'll set up a time with Dwayne. I have the certificate and the money sent out to Dwayne. So if we can set up a time for you guys to go out to Dwayne's and get all the gear. I have him informed of everything. And I have 2 nukes set back for Mandy's bees for that. So I will give you a call on the phone just directly after this, or if you want to stay on the line, we can talk after this.
We can just wait if that's easier. It's fine. It's whatever works.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just talk through this then. Does anybody have any other questions then?
No, just send me the link for Tuesday and I'll be set. Thanks.
Okay, I got that on my paper here.
Thank you.
If you'll start reading the first couple chapters in your book, and that'll go over the same things. It'll go over the bee biology. It'll go over things like that. If you have any questions between here and let me get my calendar.
Talk about the bee essentials.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've already read it, the book.
You've already read the entire book?
Yeah,
You overachiever.
I was born that way, I guess.
I'm
All
about
right.
halfway.
Okay. For everybody on here, would you guys like to do a makeup class? I mean, on the 25th, April
Yes.
25th.
I would, Jamie.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
What I'll do, because I have these 2 PowerPoints that I still have that I sent out to everybody. What we'll do, let's shoot for, let me get my calendar up here. Just 1 second.
So we'll finish what we didn't go over today with on the 25th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Right now, and I'll send out a survey to make sure that everybody's okay with it. And then I'll instantly reply it back to everybody. But so far, everybody sounds like they agree with it.
Yeah.
Why don't we shoot for April 25th,
Okay.
9:00 a.m.
Okay.
I'll post a class and I'll send it in this email with the catalog and all the other information.
Okay.
And then we'll go over summer and spring management. And then into summer management. So that way it'll get you guys, by the time you get your bees, that'll get you ahead on how to manipulate things. That way, if you guys have questions and things like that, we can answer that. If you guys want to, at any point you want to put together, give me a shout and we can do it in the evening anytime. I can open up the phone lines like that. I can patch you through. I can just send out an open thing and we can do an open forum with questions and answers. That way I can answer questions for you if you have, if it's not one-on-one and you want to get together as a group. A few of you have asked to send out everybody's information to each other. And I'm going to send that out to everybody. If anybody has any problems, what it's going to consist of is your name, email address, and phone number of everybody in the class. So if anybody has any issues, please shoot me an email and I can keep you off that list. If not, I was just going to ask permission first before I send that out because I know some people don't like it, other people don't mind.
That's fine.
So
Fine
let me
with
know.
me.
I'm sorry.
Let us know too when you're going out to the hives.
Yep, I'm going to set that calendar up. It'll probably be on Saturdays and Sundays a little bit. During the week, I'm trying to get, even though H&R Block, I love having my business, but the tax season and the government and everything else is stretched out till June now. I have a little bit of problem during the week, but it'll definitely be on the weekends. And what I'll do is try to put together a schedule on that. Right now, because of the warm up, maybe between 1 and 4 o'clock. And set it up. That way it's warm enough that we can get into the hives, but they can cluster enough to get back, kind of clustered back up before the nighttime then.
Okay.
Email. So I apologize. There's no cookies and coffee and treats and stuff, but that's the only thing
All
you're
right.
missing other than being, so. Thank you, everybody. If you
Thank
have
you.
any
Thank you,
other
Jamie.
questions, you're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
And,
Thanks.
and I'm sorry to start the year off like this, but we're doing the best, and
Hey,
the
works.
geek in me is at least keeping it going.
Yeah, it works.
All
Well, you
right.
did this on my birthday today, so
Oh,
that's
happy
why I
birthday.
said,
Oh, happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday to
Well,
you.
happy birthday.
I'm getting younger instead of older. Now you got my brain fried. Thanks, Jamie.
Hey. By November, by the time you guys come to the potluck party, you guys will have this down pat.
And we have to take a test. Is it a multiple choice?
Okay. Since you brought that up, if you want to move on to the advanced class is queen grafting. You'll turn on and you'll go through a queen grafting class. You'll learn to manipulate checkerboarding. You'll go through all that second and third year, cut comb, creamed honey, making soaps, waxes, and all that stuff. There's an exam at the end. It's 100 questions, multiple choice.
Oh, thank God.
Well, some of them are paragraph. I just give you a situation. You tell me if you think I turn graded it wrong, and you fight for the answer and you tell me the right stuff, I turn do it. What I do is I take Ohio State Master Beekeeper Program. I took Pennsylvania Master Beekeeper Program and Michigan's Beekeeper Program and
Okay.
integrated it into this. So when you guys go through this, you guys can instantly go right on Ohio State Beekeepers. In fact, I'll send you the link. You can turn on sign up to be an apprentice. So this whole class, all the stuff you're taking now, you can turn on to use all these credits and become that, and then jump into the journeyman. And then if you pass it 80%, and I'll just tell you this, everybody I've ever graduated over the last 6 years now, the ones that came to every class, took notes, read the stuff, read the book, passed it easily with an 85 and above.
Good, because I already signed up to be for the apprentice program.
There you go. The ones that couldn't make it, family situations, or just things that they just, and beekeeping's not for everybody. I'm just going to be honest. The ones that didn't went from a 60 all the way down to nothing. It's not hard. It's just going over the basics, and it's going over all the basic things of being a beekeeper, and then the advanced class. Then we get into biology, where you got to know the parts. You have to understand how nectar turns into honey. You have to understand the makeup of the wax. You have to understand how to turn on and be a honey judge, and all those other things about being a beekeeper. And some of it you might use, and some of it you might not. But at least gives you a dabble of everything across the board. And then at the end, and this year I might even do it on top. If you do a presentation for a club, or if you want to do the 5-minute gadget corner with us, so you can do it virtually online right now, or when we get together, hopefully this is done and over with by June, July. You do that, you volunteer and do something for a church, a library, or things like that. You can count those towards your journeyman. And then within your 3rd year, then you become a master beekeeper.
So anything like I do out at the village, I could use those as going towards?
Yep, volunteer time. And I think it's a class K in the manual. If you print the PDF, go to the Master Beekeeper Program, there's a PDF. And it has all the volunteer stuff. When you do that, just turn around, bite down the volunteer time, who was there. It gives you things about students, males, females. It kind of breaks it down because they want to know who you're talking to. You have somebody sign off on it, then I turn on, you give it to me, I can sign off on it because I'm a proctor for the Master Beekeeper Program.
Okay.
And then all those credits count towards your internship or your beginners, your journeyman, or your masters.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
And where do we go? What website, Jamie, to get that PDF?
I will link it onto the email that I'm gonna send out to you with the catalog and all this.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll tag that link. I got 6 monitors here, so I can click and drag real quick. But I'll send that out to everybody here, so everybody has it. And if you're interested in it, let me know. You just have to send in your registration. I think it's $5.
Yep.
And then you turn on, you get a number from Ohio State Master Beekeepers of your student number, and then you can start classifying your classes. And then I sit after this year, so in the spring of 2021, you would call me. We'd meet out to the apiary. I would open up a hive. You would tell me why you're putting on your PPE, why you're using gloves, why are you doing this, and tell me, explains. We open up a hive, you'd explain why you turn on have a reducer and understand why you use a smoker and a hive tool,
Okay.
exactly what's inside of a hive, why things are going on. And in the PDF that I'll send you on the program, it has a checklist. So it gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet of all those different things to study for. You go out, we do it in the bee yard, I sign off. As soon as I sign off, you send that form in with my signature, and they turn around and then you apply for your journeyman, and you become a journeyman at that point.
Wow.
And then all your classes you're taking this year with biology, hive maintenance, volunteerism, the honey extraction, cut, comb, and things that we'll go over this year, all those classes count towards your journeymans.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know because I definitely want to do that.
Good.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more people into it.
Well, especially where I'm going to be out at the village.
Yep.
And stuff. I want to do more further education.
I would love to have like 6 or 7 master beekeepers up here.
What would be great is because we have a junior historian program out there, I would
Yeah.
love to try to do some type of apprenticeship program with the junior historian with beekeeping.
Oh, all right.
That would be my goal.
That would work.
Work for.
That would work.
Thanks, Jamie. I
I
gotta
will
go.
I'll let you guys all go. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Be safe, wash your hands, and I want to see you next month
God bless.
on the 25th. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.